At the historic Mizpah Hotel in Tonopah, Nevada, guests still whisper about the Lady in Red, a beautiful ghost said to leave pearls on the pillows of men she likes. For decades, it's been a classic romantic ghost story. But what if I told you the ghost has a name?
The legend calls her Evelyn Johnson. And her story isn't just a haunting, it's a real-life murder mystery that's been cold for over a century. We're going to unravel the twisted tale of this ghost and a killer, and ask the question, is the Lady in Red trying to tell us who murdered the real Evelyn Johnson? A name is usually just a label, but sometimes a name becomes more. It becomes a story, a legend, maybe even a curse. This is a story about one of those names, Evelyn Johnson. It's a name that belongs to a ghost, a spirit said to wander the halls of one of America's most haunted hotels. But it's also the name of a real woman, who decades later, and a state away, committed a shocking murder. This is the bizarre dual story of Evelyn Johnson, where true crime and paranormal lore bleed into one another. We're peeling back the layers of a famous ghost story to find the disturbing truth hidden beneath. And in the process, we'll investigate a real-life tragedy that carries its own chilling echoes. What happens when a ghost story is actually a clue? And what if the facts of a true crime are even stranger than the fiction of a haunting? Section 1. The Setup. Finding Paradise. So, there were three of us crammed into Liam's beat-up but beloved SUV. You had Liam, our rugged, self-proclaimed survivalist, always over-prepared and way too confident. Then there was Chloe, the eternal optimist, the one who could find beauty in a dead leaf. Her energy was basically the glue that held us together. And then me, the quiet observer, happy to just live in the moment. We'd been planning this trip for months, a desperate escape from our 9-to-5 grind. We just wanted to see the horizon, to feel the thrill of not knowing what was around the next corner. That first day was everything we'd hoped for. We drove with the windows down, wind in our hair, singing terribly to classic rock anthems that felt like the soundtrack to our freedom. By late afternoon, Liam decided it was time to leave the civilized world behind. He veered off the highway onto a smaller road, which turned into a gravel path, and then finally dissolved into a dirt trail that was more of a suggestion than a road. "Perfect," he said, with this huge grin. "No tourists out here." He was right about that. The trees closed in around us, a dense wall of pine and aspen that just seemed to swallow the sound of our engine. The light got dim under the canopy, and I felt that first, tiny prickle of just how isolated we were becoming. My phone had lost service an hour ago. Chloe was looking out the window, her usual bright expression replaced with quiet awe. "It's like we're the only people left in the world," she whispered. She meant it to be comforting, but the words just hung there in the air with this strange, heavy weight. After another 20 minutes of bumping down the trail, the trees suddenly opened up. We found ourselves in a clearing so perfect it felt like a movie set. A small, glassy lake sat in a bowl of forested hills, its surface perfectly mirroring the bruised purple and orange of the sunset. A stone fire pit was already sitting there, waiting for us. It was perfect. Maybe a little too perfect. We piled out of the car, and the silence that hit us was absolute. It wasn't just quiet, it was a physical thing. The kind of silence that makes you aware of the blood pumping in your own ears. We set up camp like we'd done it 100 times before. Liam and I wrestled the tent out of its bag while Chloe gathered wood for the fire. The mood was amazing. We were so satisfied with the secret spot we'd found. We joked about building a cabin and leaving society behind for good. Full of that beautiful, foolish arrogance you have when you're young. We really thought we were the masters of this place. As the last bit of sun vanished behind the hills, the world changed. The friendly greens and browns of the forest melted into 1,000 shades of black and gray. The trees became these huge dark shapes with branches like skeletal fingers clawing at the sky. The temperature dropped, and a cool mist started creeping off the lake toward our camp like a silent tide. The silence got deeper, broken only by the sound of our own movements. It was that moment, right between day and night, when it feels like the world is holding its breath. You can almost hear the forest whispering secrets you can't quite understand. And you can feel it, something unseen, watching, just beyond the reach of the light you're about to make. The world we'd claimed was starting to show its true ancient face. Section 2. The inciting incident. The first crack in the calm Liam, ever the showman, struck a single match and brought the campfire to life. The flames leaped up, pushing back the dark and carving out our little circle of warmth and safety. We huddled around it, the heat on our faces feeling like a blessing. The firelight danced in our eyes, and for a moment, everything was right again. The oppressive silence was replaced by the cheerful crackle of burning wood. We broke out the marshmallows, and our laughter came back when Chloe, like always, managed to set hers on fire. In that bubble of light, we felt safe. We thought that fire was a wall that would keep the night out. We were so wrong. We were in the middle of one of Liam's exaggerated fishing stories when we heard the first sound. It wasn't loud, just a subtle rustle from the wall of trees to our left. It was heavier than a squirrel, more deliberate than the wind. All three of us stopped talking at the exact same time. Our heads whipped toward the sound. Probably just a deer, Liam said, a little too quickly, a little too loudly. He was trying to sound like our fearless leader. Chloe nodded, but her eyes stayed locked on the darkness where the sound came from. I didn't say anything. I just listened, and the forest listened with us. We tried to get the conversation going again, but the easy feeling was gone. The magic was broken. Every sentence felt forced, and the silences between them got longer, filled with a new, anxious kind of listening. We were straining our ears, just waiting. About 10 minutes went by. Then came the second sound. It was different. A soft but distinct thump. It came from the direction of the SUV, parked about 30 yards away. It was the kind of heavy thump you hear when something bumps into a car door. "What was that?" Chloe whispered. Liam was already on his feet. "Stay here," he ordered, grabbing a big flashlight from his backpack. He flicked it on, cutting a powerful beam through the swirling mist. Chloe and I just watched him walk toward the car, our eyes glued to his back. His flashlight beam bounced around, lighting up patches of trees, the side of the car, the ground. He circled the SUV once, then twice. The light froze on the driver's side door. He leaned in close. My heart was pounding. I imagined a bear, or worse, someone trying to break in. After what felt like forever, he straightened up and walked back, trying to look casual. "Nothing," he announced, stepping back into the firelight. "Not a scratch, probably just a branch falling." But I saw it, the slight shake in his hand as he put the flashlight down, the way his eyes kept darting back to the darkness. He was trying to convince himself just as much as us. He forced a laugh, but it was a brittle, hollow sound. The little seed of anxiety that had been planted with the first rustle had now taken root and was growing into a cold knot in my stomach. We weren't alone. Something was out there, in the dark, and it was moving. The fire didn't feel like a fortress anymore. It felt like a beacon. Section 3. Rising action. The unraveling. We gave up trying to talk. The three of us just sat there in a tense silence, with our backs to the fire, staring out into the darkness that surrounded us. Every pop from the embers made us jump. Every gust of wind in the trees sounded like a whisper. We were on a knife's edge of fear, hyper-aware of every tiny sound. And then we heard it. Faint at first, carried on the night air from deep in the woods. Laughter. It wasn't a friendly chuckle. It was high-pitched, like a little kid's. A single eerie giggle that echoed through the trees. My blood went cold. We looked at each other, our faces flickering in the firelight. A child? Out here? In the middle of the night, miles from anywhere? It was impossible. It sounded playful, but in that place, in that isolation, it was the most terrifying sound I had ever heard. It felt wrong. It felt predatory. Then, a new sound joined in, a low, distant rumble, an engine. My first thought was relief. Someone else was out here, park rangers maybe, but the relief soured into a new kind of dread. The The vehicle was just circling us, slowly. It made one full pass, the engine noise rising and falling, the lights flashing through the trees like a searchlight. Then, the rumble faded into the distance, and the silence it left behind was even heavier than before. Who was that? Were they watching us? The idea of a human threat felt more concrete and, in some ways, even scarier. We were so vulnerable out here. The laughter was creepy, but this felt like an intelligent threat. It felt like we were being sized up. The mood went from uneasy to full-on panic. "We should pack up," Chloe said, her voice trembling. "We should leave now." Liam hesitated. "And go where?" "Drive down that trail in the pitch black. We could get stuck. We're safer here until sunrise." He was right, logically, but it wasn't comforting. Being a sitting duck felt so much worse than being a moving target. His argument won, but just barely. We decided to put out the fire to make ourselves less of a target and hide in the tent. Putting out the flames felt like surrendering. As the last ember died, the darkness just crashed in on us, absolute and total. We stumbled our way into the tent and zipped it shut, as if that thin nylon could actually protect us. We lay there, side by side, in our sleeping bags, not daring to move, every nerve screaming. And that's when we heard the sniffing. It started at the back of the tent, a wet, guttural, snuffling sound, like a big animal taking in our scent. It was right up against the fabric. We could hear the moisture in its breaths. We froze. The sniffing moved slowly, methodically, along the side of the tent. This wasn't a curious deer. This was an inspection. Liam, who was on the outside, slowly reached for the big hunting knife he kept in his pack. I could see the faint glint of steel. The sound continued its circuit, getting closer to the door, and then it stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. What was it? Where did it go? We lay there for what felt like an hour, muscles locked, barely breathing, and then a voice cut through the night. "Everything all right in there?" It was a man's voice, but it was wrong. It was flat, monotone, with no emotion at all. "This is the park ranger, just doing my nightly patrol." My mind flashed to the circling headlights. Was this him? Liam started to say, "Yeah, we're okay," but I grabbed his arm hard. Chloe let out a tiny choked gasp. The voice didn't sound right. It sounded like something pretending to be a ranger. "Saw you put your fire out." The voice continued in that same creepy monotone. "Just need to check your camping permit and I'll be on my way." We didn't have a permit. We hadn't passed any ranger station. He was bluffing. "I know you're in there," the voice said, a sharp edge of impatience creeping in. "Come on out now. Don't make this difficult." We stayed completely silent, huddled together in the middle of the tent. A long, agonizing silence stretched out, and then we heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps, crunching away from the tent. They faded into the darkness, leaving us alone again, in a silence that felt thick with malice. The human threat was gone. But what had been toying with us was not human at all. Section 4. The climax. The face in the darkness. The aftermath of the ranger's visit was a new kind of hell. We were being toyed with. The rustle, the thump on the car, the headlights, the sniffing, the fake ranger. It was all a calculated game to crank up our fear. We weren't just lost campers anymore. We were prey. We lay in the suffocating blackness of the tent, so rigid with terror it felt like a sickness. Sleep was a joke. All we could do was listen to the night, to the silence that was screaming at us. And then the laughter came back. It wasn't distant anymore. It was right outside the tent. It was a chorus now, a waterfall of high-pitched, manic giggles that surrounded us. There was no innocence left in the sound. This was pure malice. A mocking, hysterical sound that clawed at our sanity. It wasn't human. It was the sound of something that hated us and was loving our terror. Chloe had her hands clamped over her ears, her whole body shaking. Liam was just whispering, "No, no, no," over and over. I felt a scream building in my chest, but my throat was locked tight. Then, over that awful laughter, came a new sound. A sound so normal it was the most terrifying thing yet. Zip. The sound of our tent's zipper. Someone, or something, was pulling it down from the outside, not ripping it, unzipping it, slowly, methodically. The laughter quieted as if the thing was concentrating. The zipper moved down, an inch at a time, each tiny click a hammer blow to my heart. This was it. It was coming in. In a surge of pure adrenaline, Liam kicked out as hard as he could at the front of the tent, right where the zipper was. The impact made a sound I will never ever forget. It wasn't the thud of hitting a person. It was a wet, sickening, fleshy thwack, like kicking a slab of meat. It was followed by a shriek, a piercing, high-frequency scream that was part animal, part screeching metal. It was a sound of pain and rage that vibrated through the air in the tent and made my teeth ache. And then silence. A heavy, absolute silence that was worse than all the noise before it. We held our breath. Did he scare it away? For a second, I had this tiny sliver of hope, but the silence felt like it was waiting. And then I saw it. The mesh window of the tent door began to bulge inward. Slowly. The fine black mesh stretched, distorting, as a shape pushed against it from the outside. The shape of a face. It pressed harder and harder until the features were horrifically defined against the thin material. The face was long and pale, with a waxy texture like old parchment stretched over a skull. A lipless slit of a mouth was pulled back in a silent grimace. But the eyes, there were no eyes. Where eyes should have been, there were just smooth, sunken hollows of pale skin, two blank sockets that were somehow more terrifying than any evil glare. It faced us from the other side of that thin mesh barrier. I could feel this cold, intelligent evil radiating from it. We were paralyzed, mesmerized by how wrong it was. It was looking at us without eyes, and I just knew, that it could see us perfectly. It could see our terror. It was feeding on it. The lipless mouth stretched open, wider and wider, into a black, silent O of a scream, but no sound came out. Instead, that manic, childlike laughter echoed inside my head, a psychic scream 1,000 times worse than any real noise. That's what broke us. Pure, primal survival took over. All thought was gone, replaced by one command: run. The tent wasn't a shelter anymore. It was a trap. Liam, screaming this raw, guttural roar, threw himself at the back wall of the tent, slashing with his knife, tearing a hole in the fabric. Chloe and I were right behind him, clawing our way toward the jagged opening. The image of that eyeless face was burned into my retinas. We burst out of the back of the tent and into the cold night, and we just ran. Section 5. The Aftermath. The Escape and the Haunting. We ran blindly, crashing through the underbrush, not even feeling the branches that whipped and tore at our faces and arms. We stumbled over roots, fell, and scrambled back up, just running, gasping for breath. I didn't dare look back. I was sure if I did, I'd see it gliding silently through the trees right behind us. The mad laughter still seemed to echo faintly in the woods, pushing us onward. Our only guide was a desperate, frantic push away from the lake, toward where we thought the car was. By some miracle, we stumbled out of the woods and saw it. The solid shape of Liam's SUV. He was the first one to it, his hands shaking so badly he could barely get the key in the lock. The click of the doors unlocking was the best sound I'd ever heard. We threw ourselves inside, and Liam slammed the doors and hit the lock button over and over. He jammed the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered, and for one horrible second, I thought we were trapped. Then it roared to life. The headlights blazed on, lighting up the clearing, the mist, and our shredded, empty tent. Liam slammed the car into reverse and stomped on the gas. The tires screamed as we fishtailed onto the trail and shot into the darkness. We drove for what felt like hours, flying down that dark, twisting trail way too fast. No one said a word. The only sounds were our own ragged breaths and Chloe's quiet, broken sobbing. I just stared out the back window, expecting to see a pale, eyeless face appear in the rearview mirror. We didn't slow down until the dirt finally hit gravel, and the gravel hit pavement. Even then, we didn't stop until the bright, fluorescent glare of a 24-hour gas station appeared out of the darkness. He pulled in next to a pump and finally killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. We just sat there shaking. We finally looked at each other. We were a wreck, covered in dirt, mud, and a web of scratches. Our faces were pale and tear-streaked. Our eyes were wide with a horror we could never explain. The attendant, a bored-looking kid, glanced out at us and his expression went from boredom to alarm. He saw 3 people who looked like they'd just crawled out of a grave. We never went back for our things. The tent, the sleeping bags, all of it was left behind as an offering to whatever lives in that clearing. We drove the rest of the way home in silence. What could we say? How do you put words to that? We tried once, a few weeks later, to talk about it over coffee, but it was useless. Liam tried to rationalize it. Mass hysteria, maybe a fungus. Chloe just started crying. The trauma didn't bring us closer. It created a chasm between us. We rarely speak now. That memory is too toxic. It still haunts me. Some nights I wake up in a cold sweat with that manic laughter in my ears, seeing those 2 blank, empty sockets staring at me from the darkness of my own room. It's a reminder that we are small, and the world is full of ancient, hungry things living in the places we've forgotten. What would you have done if you were in that tent, with the laughter closing in and that face pressing against the fabric? What would your next move have been? Let me know in the comments. I read everyone. And if you have your own story, your own brush with the unexplained on a dark road or a lonely campsite, I want to hear it. If you appreciate stories from the dark corners of the world, from the places where the shadows have teeth, please consider liking and subscribing. Hit that notification bell, because there are always more stories waiting to be told. So the next time you think about getting away from it all, out into the quiet of the wild, just remember our story. Remember that when you leave the streetlights behind, you're stepping into a different world with different rules. And you need to remember, you're never, ever truly alone.